I'm Steven from Just Got Played, and if you've seen my videos on the channel before, you probably know I'm a bit of a space nerd. I mean, I went to space camp growing up. I have a collection of space memorabilia. I even married an aerospace engineer. So you can imagine I was pretty excited to get a prototype copy of Galactic Cruise. So thank you to Kinson Key Games for sending that to me. This game is ages 14 and up, 1 to 4 players, and 90 to 150 minutes is about how long it would take to play. It took us a little bit longer the first time, we were playing with new players, because it is on the medium heavy side. And what does that mean? That means the game is pretty complicated. There's a lot going on, which means I'm not going to give you a full teach of how the game is played. I am going to give you an overview of all the elements in the game. So I'm going to tell you about the player area, and then I'm going to tell you about the main area and how the game is scored at the end. And then I'm going to give you my final thoughts about the game. But again, this is a prototype copy. So, anything that's in there may not be final. Even that box that I just showed you, it isn't the final size of the box because they're working on some game trays inserts, which means they're going to have to, make a different size box. There is a Kickstarter going on right now, if you're watching this video when I put it out anyway, for this project right now. You can go over to that page. I'll put a link down below to the Kickstarter project. You can go over there to see probably more of the final assets and what the game in its final form is going to look like when it comes out. But all right, let me show you basically an overview of what goes on in the game. This is what the player area looks like in Galactic Cruise, and I think it makes sense to start here when you're explaining the game, because the player board tells you all the things that you can do, walks you through launching a shuttle, and also tracks a bunch of your stuff. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to get a cockpit and an engine, and this engine is going to tell you what a bunch of your starting resources are. So you can see here, you start with 10 money, 2 ads, an agenda card, and this is reputation depending on which player you are. So you look at that, you collect those, and you just turn that over, and now you have an engine. So here's my agenda card, here's a couple of ads, and here's 10 money. Other resources that you start with is here you track the food that you have, the oxygen that you have, and the fuel that you have. And these are the resources you need in order to launch a shuttle, which we'll talk about in a little bit. These are called developments. During setup, you're actually going to take one of these developments and put it out on the main board. So you will have a little bit of extra space here. You have your workers here. This is a worker placement game. So you will be placing these workers out, usually on the main board area, but you also use these as pilots. You do have expert workers that are not available, but you can recruit. So expert workers, every game, there's going to change because it's put out randomly what is special about them. But for instance, they could make the cost of the action that you do cost 1 less, perhaps. This area is about tracking when your shuttle goes out on a cruise. The different areas, the things that they can do, right? So you can have an adventurous tourist doing adventurous things, leisure tourists doing leisure things, and family tourists doing family things. And so that's what that's about. All right, so let's look at this. So this talks about what you do at the beginning of your turn if you've already launched one of your shuttles and it's out there doing stuff. So we'll come back to that. The second part here talks about taking one of your people and one of your workers and putting it out on the board and triggering some actions. And when we look at the main board, we'll talk about that. This talks about launching a rocket or launching one of your shuttles, and we'll look at that here in a second. And this tells you about calling a meeting, which is essentially pulling your workers back. So when your workers are out, you can pull them back. They come here, and this little hand symbol means that every time you put one of your workers here, you get a funding bonus, and your funding bonuses are listed here, right? So there's money, ads, victory points, or a resource of your choice that you could get. Eventually, you can remove these, and the things that are under here are even better. All right. So, and then after you do that, you also get to trigger one of the actions on the main board. All right, so let's talk about one of the cool things you do in the game, which is launching a shuttle. So right now, I don't have everything that I need to be able to launch a shuttle. So let's set the board up a little bit so that is something I could do. All right, so I will need to have scheduled a cruise, and during that scheduling step, I will have done this. And let's just say I have, some extra resources here because I am going to need these, and I can't launch this. It actually needs to have some segments in it. So let's pretend that I had gotten these blueprints. A 0G circus and an ice cream emporium. That's fun. Let's pretend that I had built those into my shuttle at some point. All right. Now let's imagine that on my turn, I am actually going to launch this. All right. So what you do is you start down here and you just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then launch. Right. So it tells you what to do. So the first thing is you need to have scheduled a cruise. So you need to go get the cruise that you've scheduled, and you put it up here. All right. So that's cool. And this is saying to return something on the main board. So we'll show you that later. And then you also need passengers. So if you had previously allocated passengers to a trip, that's great. If you hadn't, you can recruit them now by paying ads. And there has to be a place for them to go. Right, so there is a empty cabin, and this is a family type. I'm just going to lay that down there so you can see that. All right, and so that's what these steps are. Okay, and next one is to take one of my progress cubes and take that and put it out on the progress track on the main board. So that's what these extra progress cubes are for. Those are important for scoring points. All right, next I actually have to pay. All right, so when you're paying, actually, I didn't give myself enough food, did I? All right. When you're paying, you have to pay 1 food for every passenger, and you have to pay a food for the pilot. All right. So that's why I actually needed 2 food there. That's why it says passengers plus 1, that 1 extra is for the pilot. All right. So I have to pay 2 food in order to launch this shuttle. Then I have to pay oxygen equal to the number of segments in my ship. So the segments are these middle pieces. I have 2 of those, right? So I had to have 2 oxygen to do that. And then your trip itself, the cruise that you have scheduled, tells you how much fuel that cruise takes. So this one takes 2. Now, there are ways to get additional resources on demand. Like if you have an agenda card, for instance, I could discard this agenda card at any time to get 1 oxygen. There's also reputation on the main board that you can spend potentially to get resources. So if you're short, you still might be able to do the things. All right, next is you score victory points. So this cockpit specifically says you're going to get 1 victory point for every segment on the ship. So this ship has 2 segments. That would get me 2 victory points, and those are tracked around the edge of the main board. And then the next thing you do is you turn this over. So if you see this, anytime you get a new cockpit, it's worth -5 points at the end of the game. But if you launch it, now that goes away. All right. Oops. Okay. So now in the future, I can launch this rocket again if I want to, and it still is going to give me the 1 point per segment. So that's still there. I just have negated that bonus, or that I've gotten rid of that negative thing for not having launched it. All right. And then I need to take this. Now, I mentioned that I had flipped this over when I was scheduling a cruise. So I need to take this and I need to put it down here on the engine. And then I need to launch my rocket, right? So I just put my guy up here, my pilot up here in the cockpit. And that is, now I have launched a rocket, right? Which is, I've launched the shuttle, something you're going to need to do a bunch during the game. So that was this here, right? So it's one of the things that I can do on my turn. Now, I did say at the beginning of the turn, you need to advance your rocket, your cruise, if you have one that's out there in space. So on my next turn, I would have to start by advancing this. And there are 3 different ways that your cruise can make stops. It can have multiple different stops. This one, in fact, has 2 different stops. So let's look at the 3 different kinds. All right, so the first is, I'll have my pilot move here, and that is a stop for families, which is convenient because I have a family on my ship here. So every time you land at a destination that is one of these three types, you can take this upgrade piece that's here on the engine, and I can allocate it to that area. And that area is going to give me different bonuses, right? So those upgrades there's actually a really handy player aid. And so you can see all these upgrades are described here in the book. Everybody gets one of these employee handbooks. So that's really great. And I can put this on one of these. So this one, for instance, in addition to now getting extra points, getting 4 total points, I also now have got an added ability. And this added ability is the ability to, I think this is the one that bump my own workers. So this is a worker placement game. You can bump people's workers, which you don't generally want to do, but you may have to do. But now you can actually bump your own workers, which is beneficial to you. All right. Now, since I went to that destination, I didn't have to put that there. If there were more destinations here later on, I could have decided to put it in a different place if I had wanted to. But now that I'm there at that location, I can look at this and I can say, all right, I can advertise to those people to go do things on the planet. Now, I have one person here, and they are the right type for this destination. So it only costs me 1 ad to advertise to those people. If I'd had other types of travelers, they aren't particularly interested in family stuff, but I could still advertise to them and get them to do the family stuff. But I could spend 1 ad for this person, and I could take that. And now that I spent the 1 ad, I would get 3-4 victory points, again, tracked on the main board. And so that's what happens at this stop on the cruise. Now, when it comes around to my turn again, I would go here, and this is a day in space. So in a day in space, instead of doing something on a planet, obviously, they're doing things on the ship. And so what you're going to see is, for a day in space, I have got this type of person, and they are interested in this type of activity. So the bonus for this type of person doing that type of activity is going to be listed on the main board, right? So it might be that you get advertisements for doing that. So this person with 2 different of these, I would get 2 more advertisements if that's how the main board ended up being set up, right? Word of mouth is important. Now, they're enjoying their time on the ship so much that they tell their friends when they get home. So I get advertisements for that. So that's how a day in space works. You just get stuff according to the people and the matching symbols. And then lastly, one more time, when it comes around, the ship is actually going to return. And when I do that, I'll be able to take my worker, put them back here, and I'll get a funding bonus for doing that. I could now choose this funding bonus, which is 2 resources of my choice instead of the one it was previously. And then these people are going to go away. The cruise that I scheduled is going to go away. And now I still have that shuttle available to launch again in the future. So you can see you can sort of upgrade these things by removing them. These are sort of one-time things that you take away, and they don't upgrade anything at all. But it does, the number of things that are here affect the cost of recruiting this expert worker. This expert worker, the cost for recruiting this one is related to how many developments are still in these 2 rows. And you can see here there are victory points for clearing out these columns. And there's other information on the board too. This tells you that you can have a maximum of 3 shuttles that have 3 segments. Although here you can see here's an upgrade that lets you have 4 shuttles with up to 4 segments. So there are things that you can do like that. All right, so that is the player board. So now I'm going to jump over and show you the main central area where other stuff is going on. So this is what the main board for Galactic Cruise looks like. There's another board, the marketing board. I'm going to talk about that separately because I just don't really have a lot of space here on the camera. In the final production version of this, I think this is going to be a 2-sided board, so for different player counts. But for now, just remember, prototype components may not be finished, etc. So this is set up for a 4-player game. with sort of the intro game, which means some of these neutral pieces are out here. But essentially what you have all of these different actions in the middle, the HQ section of the board. And when you take your worker and you put them out, you can trigger 2 different actions typically. And the actions are these, so lightning bolts. So you can choose to do one of the actions in this area twice. You could do both of the actions, or you can actually do actions that are connected via these developments. Now, in this case, I don't have my own disk here connecting me to one of these, so I would actually have to pay these other people for the right to use these. But anyway, let's look at what these different actions are. So this action is to put out a development. So you have to pay the cost for a development, but it allows you to put a development out somewhere. So I could actually put this here, and then for my second action, use one of these. You can also put the developments up here to unlock some of these technologies that are available. So for instance, if I put this here, if I'm the first person to do it, I gain a reputation on the reputation track down here. And then all my launches require 1 fewer fuel, or I could do 1 fewer food, or I could make it cheaper to build sections of my shuttle in the future, or I could make advertising costs less when I'm attracting the passengers. So anyway, you've got this, all these choices where to put this. And then in addition, of course, when you took this off your player board, you increased your storage capacity for something. All right, so that's what that allows you to do. Developments. This allows you to attract your expert worker. So you do have to pay for the one of the expert workers. But in this case, in this game, this is a random setup. This says that your actions will cost 1 less money when you use that specific worker. So all of these are randomized. I set them up the way the book set them up, but you can randomize these so every game can be sort of different. So that's what those do. This one allows you to take blueprints, right? So you can take 2 blueprints and then those will refresh. You can always spend 1 of your reputation to wipe any of these that you want and have new choices come out. It doesn't cost anything to take these. There are costs associated with them, but that's for when you build them. You can also spend money to get resources or advertisements. Here is where you actually build blueprints. So if you have already taken blueprints, you can build them for their cost that's listed here. If you haven't taken a blueprint, you still can build these into one of your shuttles. You just have to pay the additional cost listed here, right? So it's going to cost you some reputation and some money to just straight build one instead of going and getting it first. This allows you to take the cockpit engine pairs. So those are all listed over here. If you look at the engines, they all have some immediate benefit that you get when you take them. And then if you look at the different cockpits, they all have different, scoring abilities. So we'll talk about scoring a little bit more at the end, but you do score those at the end. Let's see. Next, we have scheduling a cruise and attracting passengers. So that's on the marketing board. So I'm going to show you that a little bit later. This allows you to take resources from the silo here. So this says I can take up to 3 resources. So I could do that once and I could take maybe 2 food and 1 fuel. And then for another action, you could refill the silo. So you have to spend an agenda card without getting any benefit from it, but then you can refill some resource all the way up to the top, and you get $1 for each space that it went. In addition, you get 1 reputation anytime you do that action. Okay, over here, these are for getting the agenda cards, which are over here on the side of the board. So the first one is you take 2 of these agenda cards. So we've talked about these before. These have, sort of game breaking abilities, or they can be used for these resources. But as you take these, it actually leaves these spaces because these do not automatically refill. This is the action to refill these. So if you take the refill action, you get whatever is shown here. So that could potentially be a lot of things. If none of the agenda cards are on there. But you get whatever is here, and then you discard whatever else is here, and then you refill all of the agenda cards. So it's an interesting play because, these are really powerful and other people will probably start taking them right after you refill them. But you could refill them and then take them as well. So, all right. So those are the actions that you do, the technologies, you've got blueprints, you've got rockets, you've got agenda cards. And this whole section here is about scoring. So these, again, are put out randomly. And so what this says is, okay, well, I've put out 5 developments, right? So if I have done that, if I have achieved that, now I'm going to raise this to 6, which is the goal that everybody else has to pass. And I get to take my cube in that specific area and move it up here. And I talked about when I launched Cruise earlier, you would take a progress token and put it out as well. So that's where that went from before when I was talking about that. This one is, if you have rockets with sets of these things, right, you can increase it. And this is talking about getting the developments in the areas where you have your adventurous or leisure or family. If you've put out the upgrades for those, you can go up here. Now you can only ever do one once, right? Like, because my cube in this column can only move up there once. I don't have another one to move up. But these cubes are a timer for the game. So when this fills up, there's going to be a scoring. And whoever has the highest reputation gets an extra cube. And then you score the number of cubes times the number of wings that have been revealed. So you can see you start with one wing revealed, and I have another one revealed here because I moved that cube. And then after that, we're going to do a second one. So when that fills up, you'll do another scoring, which is very similar. And then the third time when it fills up, it's going to be slightly different because these you score at the end of the turn when they fill up. This you actually complete the round. So other cubes might be put out that don't fit here. So you just pile them up here. But you finish the round, then you recall all of your workers, and you get the funding bonus for recalling them, but you don't take the extra action. And then you do one more turn, and then you do one more time where you advance everybody along the cruise, including maybe bringing people home. So that's all of the stuff that's on the board here. I'm going to talk about the marketing board next, and then we'll talk about the final scoring. And then I'll give you my thoughts. So this is the marketing board. So the marketing board has your cruise consultant piece is on it. This section is what I mentioned before. It tells you that when you have a day in space, the rewards you can get for sort of entertaining that specific type of traveler. So for instance, we talked about family type getting advertisements. So this is randomly set up. Also randomly set up are the cruises that come out, and you put out these people according to what was here, although their order is randomized. And so there are 2 actions that correspond to this board, right? So I mentioned these from the main board. And so one of these was schedule a cruise. And so what you do when you schedule a cruise is you take your cruise consultant and you decide whichever cruise you want, and you schedule it. And so now you have reserved that cruise, and you are the only person who can launch that cruise in the future. But the other thing that you can do as an action is you can advertise for a cruise. And so what you do when you advertise for a cruise is you can allocate people to any specific cruise. So for instance, if I look at this cruise, you can see it's got 2 stops, and one of those stops is for families. So it probably makes sense to send families on this. And you've got up to 2 spaces. So you might want to put 1 or 2 people there, depending on how many cabins you're going to have when you launch your shuttle. But let's say I just take this one person, and this one is only going to cost me 1 advertisement. If I wanted this one, it would cost me 2. If I wanted to go all the way up here, it would cost me 3. And so I'm going to put a person here, and what's going to happen is I'm going to get 1 money for every destination on that cruise. So this is a destination. So that counts as 1. And then 1 reputation if the cruise includes their preferred destination, which in case this does. So doing that would get me 1 money and 1 reputation. And in the future, when I go to actually launch a cruise, that's when I would move this back, and I would take these over to my player area and do what I showed you earlier. And then new cruises are going to come out, and people are going to move down, and new travelers are going to come out. But that is the last part of the central board that I couldn't show you earlier because it just didn't have enough space. So now let's talk about how you score at the end of the game. There are a lot of ways to score points during the game. You get points when you launch your shuttles. You get points when you have people go to specific destinations that they want to go to. You can score points as a funding bonus. And then there are the intermediate scorings that happen during the game. But then the final thing that happens, so once this fills up, again, so the round ends, some more cubes might come out. Everybody pulls their workers back. There's one more turn, and then everybody advances their cruises again one more time, and then this explains all of the extra scoring that happens at the end of the game. So I mentioned that you get points for launching your rockets. So if you look at something like this, you can see there's 3 points for every pair of developments that you've done, and so you will score all of the cockpits. And also, if you haven't launched a cockpit, you're going to get negative 5 points. And then you're also going to score your developments next. And so if you look on the player board, it shows you that if you've cleared out a column, you score specific points for the developments. On the reputation track, it shows you how many points you're going to get for those. If you look at the segments that you've built in your ships, you'll see that they have specific victory points. And so you're going to add all of those up. This is going to be just like the standard scoring that you do during the 1 and 2 and then 3, in that you add up the wings and the number of cubes times the number of cubes you have, and that's the points that you get for that. And then this is just for any leftover stuff you have, right? So if you have blueprints, agendas, ads, resources, or money, you divide that by 3, and that's also the number of points you get. So you can add all these points to the points that you've gotten during the course of the game, and whoever comes out on top gets to be the new CEO of the corporation. So that was my probably overly long-winded overview of the game, and that wasn't even the full rules teach. But I did want to kind of go over everything that you could do in the game because I really like the decision space here. There's a lot of interesting actions, and I think they all sort of go well together, right? You know that, okay, I wanted this, so I have to be able to do that. And there's, there's more things that you want to do than you're actually going to be able to get to do, right? You want to build these giant shuttles and with all these, segments, but then you've also got to get them launched and, attract all the people that can go on them and get the resources to be able to do that. And so, there's a lot of interesting decisions you have to make. And I really like how the theme is integrated here. So, I mentioned before that the space theme really drew me into the game. And I got to play this game originally at BGG Con, and I really enjoyed it then. So being able to revisit it now, again, when I got this prototype copy, has been really great. I feel like the theme holds up and it's not just, sort of pasted on. And the player board, is great. It walks you through everything, right? Here's how you, launch your rocket, and here's what you do, each step as you go through space, traveling with the shuttle on your turn, and all the different choices you have, all the different resources, everything just kind of makes sense. I mean, there's a lot going on, and so sure, you could miss something if you are hurrying and trying to move things along, and so you do kind of have to focus on all the different parts and make sure that you've got it all. But this employee handbook that comes with the game really helps in that regard. I mean, I don't know what the final version is going to look like, but it's got all this information in here that, I guess basically once you've been taught the game, this is really all you need, because everything you're going to want to reference is in here. You're not going to have to stop and ask somebody what is going on in the game. So, I think if you enjoy heavier games, so again, I'll say this is probably in the medium heavy category, or for some people, I think they would consider this a heavy game. So if you're interested in that kind of game and you like a space theme, then this is definitely one to check out. There's plenty of player interaction, I think, from competing on the ways that you're trying to impress the board to become the CEO, right? There can be a race to launch the most rockets, for instance, could be one of the things that you need to do. And you're definitely, am I going to bump somebody or that worker and give them a benefit, or am I going to just do something else so that I'm not trying to benefit them, but then maybe I have to change up my strategy a little bit, right? So there's that sort of like indirect player interaction, I think, which is, what I like in these heavier sort of engine building games. I don't really like it when you're building an engine and it's a heavy game and there's take that and that, right? Like I like take that games that are take that games, not just take that thrown into something else. So I like the level of player interaction here. But anyway, on the flip side, right? Like if you're not really into the space theme, then it is all over this game, right? If you don't think you want to play a 3-hour heavier game, at least in your first play, it's probably going to take you a while to play. Then this game may not be for you. But, if you enjoy games, I've heard a lot of people compare this to, say, Lacerda games, right? So if you like those heavier games and you have a group and can get them to the table, which is always my biggest challenge with games like this on the heavier end of the spectrum, then I think this is a great one to check out. So again, there's a link below to the Kickstarter page for this. I would say go over there and take a look at it. There's a lot more information over there than what you saw here. But just take a look and see if this is something that's going to interest you. They even have versions out there for you to try it on, I think it's Tabletop Simulator, right? So, you could go ahead and give the game a whirl because, I would definitely say try to go to a convention and play it, because that's how I played it the first time. It was a lot of fun. And I know that these copies will be floating around at conventions. In fact, I'm going to be sending this one back to the publisher tomorrow so that they can, I think, take it to a convention. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about the game, you can leave a comment down below in the YouTube comments, and I'll try to answer, what I know about the game. Or if you look in the description of the video, we have a Discord channel. So you can come on over to our Discord channel, and we talk about games there all the time. So feel free to ask us anything, anybody from the crew, questions that you might have about any of these games. Look, I got a whole bunch of games behind me, right? I can answer all kinds of questions about these games or lots of others. But anyway, I appreciate you watching this video. I hope you check out this game because, again, I really like it a lot. Galactic Cruise. And I'll catch you next time.